First item for discussion is the boundary adjustment and the annexation request from Chris Ramsey. Taryn, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This is a request from Mr. Chris Ramsey. He is requesting to annex approximately 20.2208 acres of his property that's identified on tax map 20, parcel 26, into the town of Front Royal corporate limits. He states in his letter that this request will be for the use of 150 fair market value rental apartments. The county had received a letter from Mr. Waltz, the former town manager, in October 2019, stating that the town had received a request from Mr. Ramsey and that the town was formally asking the Board of Supervisors to consider a corporate boundary line adjustment for that portion of property located at 3853 Guard Hill Road. I have included the town's meeting minutes from that meeting that they had. And just to go over some points of my report and what all is included in your packet, I included a lot of information in now. But we've had different history in our planning files, so I wanted to give you the background. The board did consider, the 2016 Board of Supervisors did consider an annexation request in September 2016, and they did pass a resolution in opposition of that. But Mr. Ramsey has come back and he's provided information, and the request is a little different regarding the use. Now it's for 150 rental apartments. Mr. Ramsey has submitted a conceptual plan prepared by Greenway Engineering, which is in your packet, and he himself prepared a community environmental impact statement. And I sent the whole packet of information to VDOT to review, and they have responded, and those comments are in your packet as well. A traffic study would need to be performed, and they did estimate the trips from this development to be 1,098 trips per day. And I also ran our county's fiscal impact model to determine the impact on schools and parks, because that's what our model runs for. And our model determines that 24 new elementary students would be generated from this development. And then the cost of the apartments for each apartment would be a fiscal impact to the county of $8,988. And that's broken down between schools and parks. And I do touch on the workforce housing in my staff report. The applicant did discuss the workforce housing needs. And our strategy in our new vision does say that it's a goal to identify suitable site locations for workforce housing. And then I went on in my report to just additional comments was that our last annexation in 2013 we did between the town, county, and another applicant. And that we did as part of a voluntary settlement agreement. So that allowed us to, a goal was to require that developers pay their fair share of associated costs that are generated by the development. So that helped us ensure that was accomplished at that time. But those are just some highlights of my report. I'm happy to answer any questions. Mr. Ramsey is on the line. And that's all I have for now.
Do we have any estimate on the roads that need to be done and the street lights that need to be put in and the stoplight that needs to be put in, what an actual cost of that would be, or something close?
I think that VDOT was saying that would be about $500,000. Is that correct, Doug?
He has stepped out, Taryn. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. Yeah, we had a cost estimate, and I'll search my email real quick because I had an email from Mr. Boyce at VDOT. But I think that's the cost. The stoplight at that intersection would be about $500,000.
Now, is that VDOT cost or VDOT and county revenue share cost?
That was, I don't know if we haven't discussed the revenue sharing,
Oh, I didn't know if
any
that
kind of
was,
revenue sharing project. No, that would be the total cost.
Taryn, this is
Okay,
Bob.
so,
And
hey, Bob.
500,000 is the approximate cost of a VDOT cost estimate for traffic signal at a 4-lane intersection like that currently.
Okay.
And if, I don't know what your discussions have been, I think you said you hadn't discussed a potential revenue sharing project, but that would be something, if came to fruition, we would have to apply for on that 2-year cycle through the smart scale application process.
but would that light initially be, would we have to put money into it, or is that all VDOT?
No, and I'm not sure, and Karen, you might be able to
Well,
address
that's
this, it would be the
that's the-
developer's cost, wouldn't it?
So that's the cost, but VDOT has not offered to pay for that.
That's what I meant.
Right.
No, not at all. That is the cost of putting in a signal at that intersection.
Is
Hey,
that-
this is Tony. I was just going to say, it seems like to me, if I remember that company, I don't know if they make asphalt or whatever down there at Riverton. They came in some years back. I think they profit. I want to say 5% of that light. At
They
least 5%.
They did proffer an amount towards that. Can you hear me? I think it was $75,000. I can
Okay.
pull my files out to make sure. But
Just wanted to try. I know they've already contributed to it once it was required.
Okay, that's the cost of the light and the, but what about the cost of the traffic going up the hill? And the asphalt and because that 1-lane road going up there is not gonna be nearly enough, is it?
so we do not have a cost estimate on what it. I mean, VDOT is saying right now that a traffic study would need to be performed. So they have estimated. They are saying that right now Guard Hill Road carries 970 trips per day, and that this development would add 1,098 trips per day. And they would like a traffic impact analysis to be performed by the developer and approved by VDOT prior to any type of rezoning. So that's the comments that VDOT has provided us at this time.
So that 1,098 is an addition to the current 970, that's not a combined.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a lot of traffic.
Chris, had you done any preliminary estimates on the road going up the hill?
Was that question directed to me?
Yes, sir, it was.
The road going up the hill is not part of the VDOT system in the sense that it's town property until it gets above the Elks Lodge. So there's only a very short section there that would be under the purview of the county itself without the input of the town. The part that then spans the entire frontage of the property, which is over 900 feet, will all be reconfigured and reinstalled, so to speak, because there'll be turn lanes as well as decel lanes and that type of thing across the frontage of the property. So there's only a couple of feet there that's of any question relative between the end of the property and the corporate limits of the town. And so we were coordinating with the town, and at this point the pavement is up the hill, from the bottom of the hill to the property, is not substandard for what we're doing relative to VDOT requirements. The major VDOT requirement on the property itself was site distance, which has gone away. But other than that, the actual road going up the hill has not been determined to be substandard, to my knowledge. However, in comment to your stoplight, we hope that the traffic count gets high enough to support the warrants that are necessary to have a stoplight installed there. So that's one of the things that we're very keenly interested in, because we think that is a safety issue that we're totally aggressively going to be a participant in to make
And how much is the developer willing to put into this, Chris?
Well, we will negotiate out. It'll be on basically a percentage of our impact. Obviously, would be a number one issue, and from that standpoint, and then also how some of the others. Taryn's done an impact study there that shows 24 students. We have statistical analysis that shows that that's probably at least 100% over in Winchester, which we patterned this project after. There's 144 units there, and they have 10 kids. So as opposed to 24 that's being projected here, because our target is workforce housing, but it's also the senior element who are renters by choice. These are not people who rent by default. These are renters by choice. Transitional housing, where people can no longer take care of the homes that they've had all their life. They sell the home, and they don't need to go to Commonwealth Living. They're still able to take care of themselves, but not take care of a yard or home. That is one of our primary clients that we're targeting for our community that is not provided at this time.
Have you established rental amounts yet?
Basically, you're looking one-bedroom apartments are around $1,100, and you'll be up to like a three-bedroom apartment. It'll be around $1,800 to $1,900 a month. And then for transitional, for renters by choice, that's very affordable in the sense that my mother is in Commonwealth and she pays almost $7,000 a month. So people who can take care of themselves, $2,000 a month is a very reasonable amount for the quality and the type of environment that we intend to provide for our community.
Questions? Mrs. Oates or Mr. Carter, do you have any questions? Mrs. Oates, you're muted.
I know. I'm trying. Okay, so I have a resolution dated, I'm trying to see what the date is because it's a resolution that says that we would no longer do any boundary adjustments between the town of Hartwell and the county of Warren. And I was just wondering, it's dated September 20th, 2016, how that impacts Jason. Do you have any insight, or have you seen this resolution?
Is that in the packet? Because I don't recall seeing that.
It was in the packet, Jason.
Okay, well, I must have missed that. But, that doesn't bind you. You can change that.
Okay.
Mr. Carter, do you have anything?
I don't know. He's talking about senior housing, and the photographs that he showed, they all look like they're at least two-story, and I thought most of the seniors are kind of looking at something on one level to make it easier so they don't have to go up and down steps. The other thing, too, is as far as the workforce housing, we obviously need that for teachers and nurses and firefighters and things like that. But I think we've learned from workforce housing that it can be called that, but it may not necessarily be that, because it's also talked about fair market. And I know that other proposed development behind Target, they were going to set aside, I don't know, 20 or 30% of those apartments specifically for that. And you got to be careful on being discriminatory, but I think there are ways to do that. So that's just one concern, two concerns that I have.
I'll just comment from the stuff that I've read in here. I think that the board is fully within its rights to go either way. And obviously, if the board declines to do this, there might be some legal action taken and legal expense, et cetera. But it's my opinion that the board, this is a pure policy decision for the board as to whether or not this is a good idea for Warren County.
Thank you, Jason.
Certainly.
Mr. Ramsey, do you have any additional comments that you'd like to make?
Thank you. My comments are that, and I've posed this to numerous people, I've been encouraged by countless people to pursue this angle. And in the pursuit of it, the question is always asked, if you were left in that position, where do you have to go? And everyone answers pretty much unanimously, you have to leave the area. You have to go to either Stevens City or Winchester to get the exact housing that we're proposing on this site. And as far as the stories and the element that we're supporting, the upper levels would be served by elevators on several of the buildings, not all the buildings, and all the every lower level, ground level, is handicap accessible. So there is a significant portion, probably as much as 30%. 30% of them would be fully handicapped accessible, and probably as much as 50% based on use of elevators. So, no, that is a key element in this proposal, because one of the questions I ask there, and I tell everyone very similar, I would like to have a place where I can go when I get to that position. My mother's there, but when I get to that position, I want a place, and I don't want to have to leave Front Royal to go there. And that's where we are, and that's the program that we are committed to.
Maybe I misinterpreted Mr. Carter's thought, because I too, looking at your diagrams, I thought these were like townhouses where it would be, you would go upstairs to the second level in your own unit. So you're saying that's not the way that is?
That is not the way it is. Every unit is on the is one level on the level that it is on. Now, we on the third level, and that'll be something we'll have to work with the town on, because they have a height restriction. On the third level, it gives us, with the size of the roofs, do some actual loft type configuration. It creates some aesthetic as well as other useful areas in some of the units on that level. But so long as the town doesn't have a problem with that, we're good there. But no, everything is one level for each unit.
And those are 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units.
And 3-bedroom.
And 3-bedroom.
And
We have a certain number of 3-bedroom and that falls into the workforce as well. And basically, it starts out where we're targeting those who school teachers and that type of things. Fair market value says that, and basically is what it's intended. It's for everyone. It's not discriminatory. So we're not in a position to discriminate, and nor do we desire to in this configuration. Nor do we want to make it totally age restricted. That doesn't serve the purpose either. So our community needs the diversity, and we propose to offer it at this site with positive amenities. And I would encourage each one of you that has the opportunity or the curiosity to go to Winchester. It's called Jubal Square. It's on Jubal Early Drive, right just beyond Grand Furnishings and Shules. There, if you drive up, you'll see it on the left, and you'll see the architecture, the amenities, the pool, the fitness center, the layout, the architectural aesthetics, the brick. They have garages that are available. It's a very unique offering we don't have here, and I feel like that it would be an extremely positive inventory to offer to our citizens.
Thank you. That's something worth looking into, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you taking the time. Any additional discussion on this one? Thank you, Chris. I believe that you can drop off now.
Thanks, Walt. I appreciate y'all's consideration.
Yes, sir. I hope you have a good day. Next discussion is the creation of the county economic development. That's myself and Mr. Stanley.
I know Mr. Chairman, I know the board's been talking about for a while we took over July 1 of last year as a fiscal agent for the EDA, which means that all expenditures, all payroll, all the incoming, say, rents and stuff, go through the county coffers. The EDA board signs off on expenditures, and they go through our books essentially. We've been talking about the potential, and it actually goes back to the previous board, about the potential to bring the EDA in as a county department, essentially with Mr. Parsons and Gretchen, or to Doug and Gretchen being quote-unquote county employees. They're already under the VRS system. They're already on the county health insurance policy. So from that standpoint, it really is more about who they're responsible and report to on a daily basis. And certainly, whether that's the county administrator, or as you and I talked a little bit about, do we try to create a community development department and tuck them and say planning and building inspections under that? That's a potential as well. Certainly, I think the question that Ms. Oates had asked, and I think Jason's prepared to answer, as far as what does that do for the EDA, IDA board? In my vision, looking at some of the other communities around us, and Jason has experience because he represents some of those communities, the IDA or EDA board still exists because statutorily they have requirements to approve things like bonds. They do bonds for the county. They do bonds for outside organizations like Randolph-Macon Academy and like Warren Memorial Hospital. They also, in my mind, would still own the land, the industrial park land, and particularly still own the Avtex land, which they have an insurance policy on, which has potential liability that, frankly, we wouldn't want necessarily to be in the county name. That under that scenario, they would be, I think, still more function like an advisory board to the executive director. The executive director on a daily basis would report to the county administrator or designee. That the executive director would still coordinate the meetings with the advisory board, just like, say, Bob does with the airport commission, or a sanitary district advisory board. So that's more the day-to-day functions. The EDA board would still have its committees, still buy and sell land like it normally would. The difference would be who the staff reports to on a basis. At the end of the day, Bob has final decision at the airport what happens, but he certainly has taken the advice of the airport commission into play. And I would imagine that's the same way it would play out, say, with the EDA stuff. I really wouldn't see it changing that much. Like everything, I'm sure there are pros and cons to doing that. There's also, certainly with the whole EDA situation, this makes the EDA more of a county function. Frankly, I'm glad it wasn't a county function, given, in some respects, given the legalities of it over the last few years. This would make it more of a county function, and frankly, more responsibility and liability for not only the position of county administrator, but you as board members. So whether it's this next fiscal year or a future fiscal year, we could certainly put a list of pros and cons if you wanted together. Jacob Dodson had previously done a survey to look at how other departments were handled in other jurisdictions last year when it was being talked about by the board. It is a fairly normal model for one jurisdiction to have that EDA as a department and have the separate board. I think ours is a little different because of the fact that this is really a joint or regional EDA, and that we have a town and county, two separate entities, and the staff would be, say, under us and not under the town. Granted, since 2012, the town's financial commitment has not there as far as the operating cost of the EDA. Another thing is that I know the town had asked for and received permission from the General Assembly to be able to create their own EDA. I don't know whether this would push them in that direction or not. if we took them under our wing, would they feel more inclined to create their own EDA? That's, I guess, a formal question that we may or may not want to ask them. But as far as advantages, the clear advantage, I think, is the board would have more direct involvement in the day-to-day operations than it does now. Whether you want that or not is a decision of the board, I think.
But one of the downsides is that we would become more responsible for their actions or inactions over that.
Well, at least the actions of staff, maybe not, so the board would still be a standalone board. And Jason, feel free to chime in if you want.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to chime in to clarify. So you can certainly have a county economic development department, and you can certainly have, with the EDA cooperation, have the current EDA staff, including Doug Parsons and others, effectively no longer be employees of the IDA, become employees of the county. But at the end of the day, the power over IDA properties is the IDA boards. So let's say, for example, that there was a offer to purchase X property for Y dollars, and the EDA wanted to accept that and sell the property, and the Board of Supervisors did not want that sale to go through. The sale goes through. At the end of the day, it's the IDA board members that are in charge of the IDA property, and that does not change. The other localities that this firm represents, I think most of them, are certainly the ones I personally work with, there is that model where, for example, Shenandoah County, Jenna French wears two hats. She works she's paid by the county, and she also does work for the IDA. And, the IDAs, the other IDAs, or at least the ones I personally represent, don't have their own paid staff. On the other hand, the Front Royal Warren County IDA is a totally different animal than any of the other ones that I've seen. Drastically more active, tons more going on, completely different situation, much more complicated, much more money flowing around the place. Very different situation. So it would give you some control over the staff, because the staff work for you now, but ultimately the control still is with the IDA board members with respect to what they can and cannot do. And one little wrinkle is that I'm county attorney and not EDA attorney, and that I was asked to be both and declined because of the difficult situation. We just got done with a closed session about all of the complications with the IDA. In other capacities, I represent the Shenandoah County IDA and Shenandoah County. I represent the Bridgewater IDA, and my partner Jason Buckins represents that town, and the Dayton IDA, and I represent the town of Dayton. But again, the Warren County IDA is pretty different. At this point, I think you are going to have to pay for the employees anyway of the IDA, because they don't have the money to do it. I mean, that's possibly a reasonable request to say, hey, now they're going to be county employees and they're going to report to the county. But that separation still exists, and that you would have county employees getting legal advice from a different attorney, Sharon Pandek, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but you would have that situation. But at the end of the day, if you do this, you still don't really change the dynamic of, at the end of the day, it's the IDA board that decides whether or not their property is sold, bought, whether or not they, sue this person or that person, et cetera.
But does the dynamic of the perception change?
Yeah, and right now, of course, that may or may not be good for you from the county's perspective, and I think that was what Mr. Fox's point was. So yeah, although I would say that perception currently exists, I think the public doesn't understand, generally speaking, or doesn't focus on the fact that it's a separate political subdivision. So, for example, everybody would understand that Front Royal is different from Warren County, but the Front Royal Warren County Economic Development Authority or Industrial Development Authority is just as separate as Front Royal is. It is an entirely separate political subdivision. Maybe not just as separate because you all appoint their members, but it is an entirely separate animal. But people don't focus on that, and I think people already think that the two are completely intertwined.
Well, I think that they do, but I also think that people believe that they're still running their own show. And
well, they are, and will continue to run their own. show.
That is correct. But if you bring the director in, and you bring his assistant in, and we announce that, the perception changes that we're actually doing something.
Well, the perception changes, and it's not just perception, Mr. Chairman. And I want to clarify a little bit what I say. I mean, Doug Parsons would report to Doug Stanley and ultimately to this board instead of reporting to the IDA board. So that is certainly a transfer of power to some extent. But again, at the end of the day, Doug Parsons has to carry out what his EDA board tells him to do. And of course, that'll put him, if those boards are ever at odds, that's a little bit difficult for him because he's got the one board that tells him sell the property and the other board that says don't. And by the way, we'll fire you if you don't. And that's an extreme situation. But,
I wouldn't hope it would be that.
Where everybody's all combined in together, there aren't these extreme circumstances occurring. There isn't a need for separate counsel, for example.
Mrs. Oates, you had done a lot of research on this type of thing, and a week or so ago you had a lot of questions. Do you have any now?
Well, I called Jason on the side and talked to him about the dynamic, the change of the what I was concerned about was the potential of neutering the board if this dynamic changed, and Jason has clarified that in today's discussion that isn't going to happen.
Right.
I believe the energy and the synergy right now is very good, and I didn't want to disrupt that by creating a whole different dynamic that wasn't necessary, frankly. We're going to pay the bill regardless, whether he works for them or he works for us. So I wasn't sure that we were trying to fix something that wasn't broken. So that was my greatest concern. And Jason provided a lot of clarification. I still have some of this to digest, and I'll let you know if I have any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Carter?
No, I'm good with the discussion, and we can see how it plays out. I think it may be worthwhile to put this on liaison and discuss it with the town. Because to me, it doesn't make sense for us to have it and them to have it too. And the thing of it is, most of the properties that have development potential are located in the town, so they're going to be beneficiaries of it anyway. And they benefit, the county benefits as well. So, and like I said, I think we've taken care of the financial issue by becoming the fiscal agent. So we have that oversight as well. And again, I think like Jason said, the whole thing, the IDA would still have to retain the property and make the decisions to sell it. And I guess if I heard Jason say correctly, or say that Mr. Parsons say he became an employee of the county, he would also answer the IDA board as well, wouldn't he?
Yes.
Okay. It could be a conflict. I don't foresee it, but things change. So I don't know.
I realize it's hard to work for two masters, and I would like to see the EDA working for the benefit of the whole county. And I don't know of a simple way to stop the town from developing their own. And by us telling them that the management of the EDA is now under the county is just a simple way to start that process, I think. Maybe entirely wrong, but we came on board, a lot of us, seeing that there was something wrong with the EDA. It had started to change. Now we're just trying to let it change and solidify that change, and we've got a brand new board. And I'm happy with the way that it's going, but I think bringing Mr. Parsons and Gretchen under the umbrella of the county might be something that the overall public would like. And then they can go sell the product no matter where it's at, whether it's in the town or the county, and the only thing that we have to work out is how the town is going to help pay for it. And that's a hard discussion with the current management that's there.
So, Mr. May,
Yes.
the only thing I would add to that is that the town already created an EDA, and they were the joint creators of the Front Royal Warren County EDA.
And now we got to make them step back up to the plate.
Well, right. And of course, we have an agreement with them that says otherwise. But the point I try to make is that they're talking about wanting to make their own. Well, they already made their own. They're effectively asking permission to make a second one.
So obviously there's more discussion that needs to be made on it.
I don't know how we're gonna bring the town to the board by saying we're gonna take over the EDA. That's basically
not.
taking the toy away from them. Yep, they're not willing to play well with the ball, but by doing that, we're taking the ball away and say, play my game or don't play at all. I mean, that's just my estimation of doing that. I feel like, you know, the new people on the board, with everything they're doing, it seems like they're headed in the right direction. And I'd like to see them stay as they are and give them more time to see where they can go before we make this drastic a change and pull them under the county. Yes, the former board, there was, you know, everything that happened, but for a lot of years it did a lot of good things until the cancer moved in, and hopefully the cancer's gone. I would just like to see them have an opportunity for a while longer to be cancer-free and move forward.
Okay. Mr. Fox?
Well, I think it has some merits, but I have some concerns about it, just as well as Mr. Cullors. So I'd like to see us keep that in the back of our mind and continue going forward with the way we are. Perhaps a work session at some future date, we might could discuss it further.
Do we want to put a time limit on it, or a matrix that says they're doing what they want to do, or?
I would say 2 or 3 months and take another look.
Readdress it and
Sometime in the second quarter or summertime?
I mean,
we are going to pay the bills.
cost savings is not there. We're gonna pay the same thing one way or the
If you
other.
want to maybe wait till September and revisit. I mean, the odds are, if and when you ever make that decision, the easy demarcation point is the start of the fiscal year. So, I think pretty much we're punting probably till next year, which is fine. Like I said, there are pros and cons for me, and that you have, and for us, for you, for my board, is that, but nothing really is going to change. Obviously, I think you as the board, I certainly am much more engaged. The chairman calls me and asks me for input, which I didn't get that before. You guys are much more involved than
Right.
previous board. You've been allowed to go to closed session. I've been allowed to go to closed sessions where I was not before. So, certainly there's a lot more input. And Doug, frankly, he'll call and ask questions because of the financial side. We're more involved in that. So, yeah, I think being the physical agent has changed 75% of everything. And the remaining 25 is simply, who does Doug report to on a daily basis? And, that's the board's call if and when it wants to make that change, as long as you feel like, the EDA board's doing good things. I agree with you, Ms. Colors, that we kind of need to assess, and Tony said as well, how does this relationship with the town work?
And this gives the
And-
town a little more time to reconsider their current position and maybe get on board with us, where I think otherwise we're kind of shutting the door by saying we're taking it at this point.
The reality, and I think Doug Parsons would agree, the state is encouraging regional EDAs now versus independent silo EDAs, and that they want regional cooperation. So, in essence, if that's the way it played out, the county and town ended up creating their own separate. We're bucking the trend. We're going in the opposite direction of the rest of the world, and we should be getting bigger and collaborating with our neighbors, like a Frederick and Fauquier and
Which only makes sense.
Shenandoah.
The boundaries are very close.
Yeah.
So.
I would think that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tony.
No, I was just going to say, I think I would agree with Ms. Colors and Mr. Fox and just leave it as it is. And as far as a time frame, I think I would say let it go till after the first of the year, unless something comes up. And the main reason for that is the town council has an election coming up in November, and there's going to be a new mayor, and 3 of the council seats are open. I know at least one person's not going to run again. So depending on who gets on the town council, they may be, more receptive to these ideas. The other thing that can happen too, hopefully, is as mentioned, a lot of the properties that have the potential are in the town limits, and that'd be in Avtex and Happy Creek Industrial Park. So hopefully maybe some things will come in there, and the town will see that the EDA, IDA is working to bring businesses into the town as well as the county.
Go ahead, Mrs. Oates. You had something?
Actually, no, it's been answered. Thank you.
If I could add just one comment that, the town, the reason that the county has influence, no matter how it is structured, is that because of Jennifer, because of, according to the lawsuits that are filed, because of Jennifer McDonald and actions and perhaps others, they need money. And the town is not financially supporting the IDA, and the county is. So obviously the county has influence, the town does not, purely because of that. And that is going to be the way it is for as long as they need money and for as long as the county is providing it.
So, Jason, did the Virginia Assembly vote to allow the town to create another IDA?
I don't know. I don't think so. I know that they asked for that, and I haven't followed up as to whether or not they did it or not. Doug, do you know the answer to that question?
I believe it is correct. I haven't seen the signed bill from the governor, but I believe that it did sail through the House and Senate, but I haven't seen the final version.
Okay, so that's not something I had followed up on, and I can do that if you like. Although, if you want me to figure out what the answer is, or maybe Doug can, but I don't know the answer to that. I know that they asked.
Well, let's let Doug do it first.
Cheaper.
Yeah. We beat that horse a lot, so I appreciate that.
So is the consensus to discuss again in September or first of the year?
I'm willing to consider Tony, because a new board, new mayor, there's a lot of things that could change. I would say let's look at it again in January after the elections.
Okay, so
And
the first meeting in 2021, that is Tuesday, January the 5th, so that work session?
Sure, I mean, that's a long time to plan for it, but yeah, that works.
I would just suggest that, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good. I've been pushing *6, *6. I'm getting mixed up. No, I would suggest to just leave it as a reminder, because even though they'll take office January 1, they're going to be, like our new board members can attest, they're going to have their plate full and learn all the ins and outs. The other thing, too, is hopefully they'll have a permanent town manager, and I'll give them about 6 months to get settled in as well. So I don't know if we need to have we could always do the work session, and then if we feel we need more time, we could cancel it. That's the only thing. But just keep it, on the back burner and fresh in our memories.
Well, yeah, I look at it as the first week in January, we get triggered to start looking at it again, and we will know November 4th who the winners are, and most of us are following the candidates, so we'll kind of know which way that they're thinking, and not expecting us to do anything until later on in the year. But thinking about it and actually putting a timeline on it is a good thing, I believe. So,
Okay, that's fine with me.
does that work for everybody?
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, I agree.
Okay, then our last thing on, does everybody have a copy of the video system quote that the town council has put together? I've got,
I don't have
I
one,
don't think I've got anything on it.
but I saw the thing last night.
you saw the thing last night.
No.
So I had emailed that out, so
Okay.
I didn't make any physical copies, but Tina had forwarded that to me, and I forwarded it to the board members.
I've got a couple of questions for us. Do we know if this thing is, a decision was made to do it, or was there an RFP or an RFQ that was actually went out to do it?
So this company, I believe, according to the town, I asked the question, is under like a state or a joint purchasing contract. I believe the town IT director,
Todd,
Todd, so they became aware of Rhonda North, the former clerk who works in Middleburg, had talked to them about, hey, this new software package out there. There are a handful of other products. This one apparently is on either a joint purchasing or some type of agreement that you can buy off of. So that's how I believe the town, you heard Lori Cockrell, I think Lori brought it back to council, how they probably directed Todd, the IT director, to go investigate and look into it. We had each received $32,000 to upgrade equipment. We had actually a few years ago, Dwayne was part of that, had participated in what would it take to upgrade the equipment like we did 20 years ago, which is simply buy new cameras, buy new equipment in the AV room to replace what we have. Not a new software package, not a new system. So we had gone down that line. We had presented Comcast with, here's what it's going to take to replace the 20-year-old cameras, which technology-wise is ancient. Replace the potentially the mics or the equipment in the AV room. We got that commitment through the Comcast franchise. The town IT director last year had latched on to, that was the first time I had heard that. So it went from Rhonda North to sound like Lori Cockrell or others over to the town IT director. We had a meeting a couple months ago where we were presented with the idea, the concept. I had talked to the folks in Winchester who are using Swagit and they like the system. For the most part, it allows a lot more user functionality on the citizen side, because you can go and search and say, I want to know when Mr. Ramsey's development was talked about, and I can go plug it in at Zoom. It goes to the meetings, clicks on each of those times. You can go click on each of the meeting sections and pull it right up. So the equipment cost for us $39,000 is a little more they've got more money because Chantel is actually doing a franchise in town. They're not doing one in the county. They want to go to the higher density areas. They've got a little bit more money to play with than we do, but at least probably 80% of the costs would be paid for by the funds we're getting from in year one from Comcast. The commitment is moving forward, and it's based on number of meetings that include us and the school board. We've got more meetings than the town does. There's that cost, and it's really the indexing piece where they would take each meeting and index it, load it up, and store it. I think the biggest savings, as you heard from Emily, is the time it takes her to get the DVD from Dwayne and get it, smash it together and upload it to YouTube to be able to post it. That's the main savings, I think, time-wise for you.
Yeah, and if I may, the capability of Swagit to do the time stamping as well. You'll have the agenda pulled up on one side and you'll have a video next to it, and you would be able to click on the items on the agenda and it'll jump straight to when that was discussed in the video. So that's not something that we have the capability of doing right now. So right now a citizen would have to watch the YouTube video and just click through time-wise and hope they land on it at some point. So having that, and I double checked with her, it's compatible with our website host that we have now, Joomla. So all we would need to do was create a blank web page and everything would pull from their server and land on ours, so we wouldn't have to create anything additional.
Have they looked at other companies though
Yeah,
to do a
that-
comparison?
that was where my
of
next
quality
question
and
was gonna go.
cost and all that?
Yeah,
I
I
don't
can't
believe
answer
so.
that. I don't believe so.
I haven't
Because
heard.
that's my concern is, are we grabbing at the first thing and not saying that it still may not be the best one, but you've got nothing to compare to say, oh, I like this one better, or this one is just as comparable, and then the price and stuff. So that was my only thought with it.
Because to me, I'm a very much of a layman in this thing. But it seemed like to me the cost of the equipment that I saw in their presentation was a lot. And then
For
a
a few
month,
cameras
a
and a
yearly
system.
fee to actually do that is a lot.
We would have spent about $60,000, right, Dwayne, to replace and upgrade the equipment. That's what we were planning on, based on you and Todd working out the equipment list.
Probably would have been a bit more now that we have to consider social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our biggest problem is we're in nowhere. Anybody coming in is going to have to commute. We have to pay for that time.
Yeah.
So even though it may sound like it's expensive, the equipment is not that expensive, but it's man hours.
Okay, so
You're
that's
basically
equipment
paying
and
for it.
labor
The
and
install, all that's what all
their
part of.
travel, that's, okay. I didn't know if that was just
AV
equipment and we've got the
The company
other.
we currently use, they're out of DC, and of course we're paying travel time when you get the cost of anything we do. That's certainly, if there's a concern on the board, we could certainly go back to Todd. Emily could email this afternoon, hey, we'd like to have a comparison or two to be able to
Is-
lay it next to it.
Is there, I mean, I don't know that I'm the only one that's got the concern. I mean, you brought it up too. I think that we have enough knowledge to put an RFQ together and it should be quoted.
Well, it'd probably be an RFP, because RFQ
Okay.
doesn't get you prices. RFQ gets you qualifications for firms, and then you still got to sit down with each firm and negotiate and get through that process.
Okay.
If you ask for proposals, you could say, here's our issue, give me a dollar figure, give me a proposal to fix this problem. We could ask and say, we'd like to see
What your
other options
proposal is
are
all
out there.
about.
That's right.
I know
I would be happy.
when I was
to-
at school for the school nurses, there were so many different programs, and if we'd gone with the first one, we might not have known that this one was a little better for what our personal needs were versus the other counties or something. But I mean,
This may
it was
be,
a nice presentation.
Yeah, it was a nice present, and this may be better than sliced
Yeah.
bread. But I don't know that it is. I don't know that it is.
So, would you like, sooner the better, would you
Yes.
like us to go?
Yeah, it sounded like they were, at
mean, they
least
were-
to ask the question, to know that we didn't just hop on board with the first thing and then we find out we should have looked a little longer.
Okay. We can go back to the town, Emily can craft something, and we'll send it over to Todd and say, hey, the board would like to see,
Let me,
at least one or
This
two
is
other
Dolores.
proposals.
This is Dolores. I have a lot of questions about the system, particularly the security aspect. So I don't know if any of you guys followed Fairfax County Schools, but they implemented a Blackboard, which is a very widely used software for online education. And somebody hacked into it and was presenting some very unsavory pictures while it was in session. And so I would like to understand that while we're streaming this, that somebody's not going to be able to hack into the thing and put up things that are just not very attractive to our community before we move forward with any online streaming software.
Let me just take a step back. That potential exists right now as we're streaming this meeting. But I would hope they're in a situation that would be more secure than what we're currently using. But at least you have somebody to go back to and say, hey, wait a minute, we got a problem.
Yeah. And it's a very valid question to ask, because there might be another system with more security than this one. That was a question the lady couldn't answer last night. Was the
right, I
security.
was going to say that. She was going to send you, Mrs. Oates, some information on security, if I'm not mistaken, or have a technician
I was
call you.
expecting to hear from her with respect to that, to find out what level of security, because you also don't want transcripts to be able to be changed and those kinds of things. You have to understand, and there was nothing in the documentation that indicated the level of security or the firewalls that were available to keep people out from doing that sort of thing.
Okay, good. Next, you had another question? Yeah.
No, that was the only comment that I had at this point. But there were a number of things, like you pointed out, a bill of materials would be nice so that we could see what the model numbers are to the equipment that they are proposing. That's always a nice thing to have, just so you can see the comparison on the market of what the prices are for that equipment.
Well, if we did an RFP, that would give us all of that. I mean, the RFP would actually lay out everything that they're going to try to do, and what product they were going to use, and how much it was going to cost, and all of that stuff. So, well,
they don't always give you a bill of materials, which indicates the like that.
Well, I mean,
I think they were using a Dell Edge server. And so you would have the actual model number, so you could go and compare the pricing for that with other vendors.
I'm not challenging that. I'm just saying that, is the system that they're providing 3 cameras or 5 cameras?
4. Dwayne says 4. Dwayne's sat in on the.
Okay, I mean, that's good.
Right
You sat in on it, we didn't. And, the synthesizer box, is it 2 boxes or is it 1? And is 4 cameras going to be enough?
I think you can get that pretty easily as far as a layout. Yeah, I don't think that'll be a problem.
And that
They've
way
got
we
the
can
list.
hand it over to somebody with the requirements that we're looking for and say, here, bid it. If you're on the system to bid the product, you can bid it.
Well, ideally,
And then you make a decision.
if you want to keep the town's time frame, ideally you'd find 2 or 3 firms that are either on joint procurement contracts, so you don't have to. If you put the RFP out, you're putting it out probably for a minimum of 30 to 45 days. You'll take a month or 2 to review it. Then you'll have another presentation, and you'll compare. Here's A, B, C, and D, the 4 proposals, and you can line them up. Or you could find 4 firms that are on joint procurement and say, look, here's what we've got from one. Can you give us a proposal to do the same thing? Give me a list of localities that you currently serve, and so we can go on and look at their websites and see. I've gone on and looked at Winchester's website. I've gone on and I've talked to the city manager and talked to a council member to see, do you like the new system? How does it work? You'd like to be able to do that with other software packages if you can. But I agree. Now's the time if we want to ask them to get us a comparison or 2 to look at. Maybe this is the cheapest. The fact that there's no price increase, it sounds like forever.
That may be the winner.
That may be the winner.
Yeah, but
Yeah. It'd be nice to
I
know,
think it's
right?
just doing our due diligence to make sure that we're not overlooking something just because it wasn't
I mean, it's obvious to everybody around that we need it,
Well, I
and
think
we might as well be
I
smart.
want to ask another question because I'm kind of confused a little bit about what the purpose of this acquisition is. So is this software just streaming and isn't going to enhance our audio? Because when I ask about the actual audio, which is, and I think Dwayne can attest,
He was
has
just shaking his
issues,
head.
is that going to correct that?
it's not going to correct it, and Dwayne knows because Dwayne's worked on the system. You know, some of the issues have been like the wire connection in the floor for the podium. Dwayne, as far as the mics themselves, what's our issue? You know, some of it's been kind of the tinny noise that you hear. Is that coming from the equipment in the room? Is that in your room, the AV room, or is that coming from issues we have in the actual boardroom itself?
Actual boardroom itself and the members not speaking closely into the microphone, turning their heads left or right when they speak, and they're not in the access of the microphone when they're speaking.
Can somebody give him a microphone closer to him so we can hear, please? Thank you.
A lot of the issues are just basically personnel with not being speaking directly into the microphone, speaking off access to the microphone, and those microphones are not the best microphones that are available to do to pick up the audio with. That would be my recommendation on what the basic problem with the audio is.
So this system, just to reiterate, isn't going to fix the audio problem.
And it's only dealing with the video and the social media aspect of
Exactly.
presentation.
So
But we will still have to do something.
I want a system that fixes the problems that we have right now. We've got reverb and the microphones aren't very good. I mean, so honestly, you shouldn't have to put your mouth right up to it for people to hear.
So one of the problems, frankly, you can get mics that sit flat on the counter, and it will pick up everything, including if you lean to the board member and whisper in their ear next, it will pick that up. The microphones that we have, you have to talk to, and those were picked out specifically for that purpose. If you want to pick up everything, you can do that. You just have to realize that
You pick up everything.
you pick up everything.
What's on the
That might not be a
table?
good
Yeah.
What's on the table right now is an omnidirectional microphone that picks up all the way around. The cardio pattern that's in the boardroom, you have a small axis, and once you get off that axis, you can't be heard. Ideally, you want to be 6 to 8 inches, maybe 12 inches away from the microphone when you're speaking. And most of you guys, when you speak, are further away than that. And when you lean back in the chair, I have to raise the volume, which causes feedback, because that feedback is bouncing off the wall,
Okay.
coming back into the microphone, going back into the system, and that's what causes the feedback.
So basically, we need education on how to use
If we
it.
we need to go to school.
Or why don't we get wireless mics?
Expensive.
And again, you're picking up every single thing.
Yeah.
That's the
Or else-
omnidirectional. You'll pick up everything.
Yeah.
Pick up everything.
And I think one instance that really highlighted this personnel problem was during the audit presentation a couple of months ago. If you noticed, Matt McLaren was standing further back from the podium, and he was talking kind of softly, and the reverb was there. But when the other gentleman from Robinson, Farmer, and Cox was up, he was right before the microphone, talking clearly and loudly, no reverb at all. So it's that right in front of the mic concern.
Okay.
Plus, we don't have anything for remote calling in.
Not in the boardroom
Not in
currently.
the boardroom.
And the,
right
and
now,
the
so
closed caption option for the hearing impaired is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Something, yeah.
Dwayne, if you wanted to replace every single mic in there and your soundboard, what are we talking dollar-wise? Just ballpark.
That's kind of a hard guess, because I haven't kept up on technology. Microphones can run you up to $1,000 a piece.
Okay.
But 10 grand, you could probably replace the mics.
For 10 grand, you probably could.
Yeah. I mean, that's
I mean,
if you had to deal with that separately, you could, and certainly in 5 years, whether you do it now, you're gonna have to, at some point, you're gonna have to replace.
You're gonna have to
lights.
replace it
Yeah.
anyway.
And that would still be 50-50 split with the town.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking
Well, I
at,
think it would be prudent if we're going to invest in streaming software that we replace the aging technology at the same time, so
Right.
that, you know, we do one and done. That would just be my suggestion.
yeah, we're looking at 20 years right now, and almost everything now has gone digital.
Yeah.
Digital is expensive.
You know, truly, we're doing the right thing. It's just, we've got to determine what we want and what the price is
So
going to be.
as
at
Todd,
the
we
end
need
of the day.
competing proposals, and we need to look at the replacement of the audio system as well. Upgrade the audio.
Thank you. I think that's prudent, because I think we were under the misconception that this solution was going to fix those issues as well. At least that's the way it was presented initially. And then, you know, we find out that it doesn't have microphones. It's just going to give you lots of camera angles and online streaming and transcription.
And high def cameras that, you know, obviously are going to be a little clearer. I think that was a
Right.
good point.
I don't want to be that pretty on camera. I don't care.
We'll do a wide angle shot, don't worry.
You need a wide angle shot. Thank you. I really appreciate everybody's time. Do we have to have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, sir.
I move we adjourn.
Second. Sorry, I'm
Any-
half an hour late for CPMTs.
Any comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Carter,
Aye.
Ms. Oates,
Aye.
Uh,
Mr. Fox,
Aye.
Ms. Colors,
Aye.
Mr. Maid.
Aye.
Let's go.
Thank you, everyone.